Welcome to Season 10 of CX in the Wild. 10 seasons of conversations with the visionaries who are reshaping the world, one experience at a time. This season, we go further into the minds of those who challenge the status quo and reimagine what's possible. And now, the adventure continues.
Welcome back to CX in the Wild. I'm here with Anne. We are, I think, the fourth or fifth podcast here in this Airbnb. And I always just like to start off because I feel like it's best for you to contextualize yourself, what you're doing. So tell us who you are and what's keeping you busy these days.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I'm Anne Schirrmeister. I'm from New York City. I'm currently a senior research manager at Suzy, which is a market research company and SaaS platform. And what's keeping me busy these days? So at Suzy, I both execute and propose advanced research initiatives and methodologies. So, Suzy has various types of clients across all types of industries. And so I work across them to really help them define their consumer, understand what their needs are, what they need to focus on, and how to, meet those consumer needs and drive the business forward, whether that be helping them develop a new marketing campaign or a new product launch. We infuse the consumer throughout the entire, product cycle or marketing cycle.
Well, as you know, from my laborious setup here this morning, thanks for your patience, these are all topics near and dear to my heart. As I've explored this topic, there's been a lot of discussion around qualitative, quantitative analysis of customers. But I'll just share with you, I've started to hear some really interesting discussions over the last year around the world. Like, here's one from Forrester. Mm-hmm. I interviewed a senior analyst at Forrester, a bold lady, leader, thinker, and non-compromiser or to conformity. Mm-hmm. And she hit me with this premise of how numbers are inhumane. And if customer experience is about empathy, what is the relationship between the numbers and the empathy? Because to label someone an NPS score or label someone a target or, it's a very interesting form of discernment or even discrimination when you start to replace human beings with numbers. But then, because I'm such a nerd, I'm like, well, if humans are just numbers, how far away from that is AI? Like, AI is just a bunch of numbers and humans. Anyway, I'm digressing, but I think it does say that you're in a field and an expertise in the world that it's certainly in a state of evolution. Mm-hmm. And so to have younger people like yourself exploring this, it's great to have you on the show. That's all I'm really saying. Tell me about what do you find the most interesting part of the data and the research these days? Like, what's trending? Since you're actually at an organization that's at the forefront of this, what's like the hot topic there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, recently, I think I've been involved in a lot more loyalty program research. So not only, starting from the first stages and exploring what those loyalty programs might look like. Would a customer of this company even want a loyalty program? What types of features would they want included and things like that? So kind of starting from the beginning stages, really exploring what that program could look like to the very end in, kind of validating and refining concepts that they already have. And I think, loyalty programs have been popular for a while now, but, with a lot of things happening in our world and in, current events, I feel like brands are still continuing to, emotionally connect with consumers in different ways and really try and differentiate themselves in this very crowded marketplace. So that is a trend that I've been seeing.
Loyalty, customer lifetime value. But also, we're also talking about in loyalty, it's sort of one of the few places where the personalization becomes strong. When an organization, I think what we've seen over the years is loyalty programs have a kind of continuity for personalization that the rest of the journey lacks. And I think as we became more of, these are my words, my perceptions, subscription economy, like we subscribe to our cable or our phones or our electricity or our credit cards, or, I mean, we literally subscribe to our own money through our credit cards. It's like crazy. What I find interesting about this topic of customer lifetime value and loyalty and subscription is, I have this thesis that there are no new customers. So what I believe is that people have a limited amount of income, and we've been so good at chopping that up into little pieces and each of us taking our small piece of the pie. This is the interest for your credit cards. This is your rent. This is your car. This is your phone. This is your TV. This is your internet, breaking it up, that customers in general are oversubscribed. So the question in my mind always is, how much emphasis do you put on new customer acquisition versus these loyalty programs, which I think if you look at this 80-20 rule, if our existing customers and we're a subscriber-based company, then loyalty becomes super important, right? But then when you craft the brand and the strategy for your company, are you focused on your existing customers, or are you trying to get new customers who are going to come into the market? Or, as a CEO, that's got to be a tough decision. So I think, you're probably advising on that or looking into those topics. Are any of these conversations coming up in your world?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, focusing on either current customers or prospects is something that, you have to balance. But I think in most of my research that I do, when we are, for example, if we are launching a new marketing campaign to kind of bring awareness to a new product, we both target current customers and prospects so that we can, ensure that our current customers would still be motivated to, purchase from this company or this brand. But it would also, pique the interest of prospects and potentially help acquire new customers. So we always have that lens of, cutting the data by what type of customer it is. If it is, current, lapsed, prospect, or a complete rejecter. So we, slice and dice the data in those different ways to see what comparisons we can make. And, let's say there's a big difference in how a lapsed user finds a marketing campaign versus a current user. We could really dig into that further with maybe qualitative research to really understand why it's not really resonating with the lapsed user, and what, new messaging we could put out there to really help them understand it better or have it resonate with them more.
You're really talking about this communicating with people. And what's going through my mind is, we could talk about the work that your company does. We can talk about the industry. But what I think is also fascinating as we were setting up here, there are now new emerging generations of, CX leaders who are they come from a society, a economy, an education, and a position in business that didn't exist before. And so prior to me, there were some founding sort of minds, like a woman named Jean Bliss. Have you read her book?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So shameless plug for Jean Bliss. Jean Bliss wrote a book called The Chief Customer Officer. And what was fascinating about this book is it it was like right at the dawn of where we had the phones and we could actually have jobs doing this. So she wrote this book, and I think the first group of people who read that book are probably all the CXers that you see out here now. Right. And I read the book, and it sort of was what I found most fascinating about this book, and I think you will too, is all of these things we think about is like, what is my job? What would I do? How would I do it? Who do I talk to? Why do I talk to them? What's needed to be successful? Mm-hmm. All of that, somehow Jean knew this and put it into a book. And nowadays, I would say everybody has a book. I even have a book. But like, and then now I wrote my book before there was AI. So now all of the people, so I don't recommend books, but Chief Customer Officer. And the reason I say this is there was Jean Bliss, Shep Hyken. There was the two, I think of them as the matriarch and patriarch of CX. Mm-hmm. Then there was the next wave of followers like me, and there's a whole list of great people out there who were like this next generation. And then I think you sort of, in my mind, represent the newer, smarter, faster, better CXer. What do you tell me about, like the day in the life of you and what you do as a professional in this industry and where your aspirations and your strengths are? Because I'm really curious, if you don't mind me getting a little personal, I'm curious in what does a young person, like what do you bring to the table these days?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. So in terms of my day-to-day, so I mentioned I both propose and execute research initiatives. So within execution, I'm really managing these projects end to end. So when a client comes in and has a new research objective, I identify the appropriate methodology to use, whether it's a survey, a focus group, a conjoint analysis, a max diff. I kind of craft that recommendation. And if the client is, on board with it, then we move forward. I identify the appropriate audience that we need to target based on their objectives and what they're trying to do, what data cuts we need, what sample we need. A lot of sample management goes into my day-to-day, because I think that is one of the most challenging pieces of market research right now, is kind of finding those niche audiences, because our objectives are getting more and more specific. Our customers are getting more and more niche. So it's more and more important to find those really unique people. And so once we, have the research design all set up, we go into field and we, wait for the data to collect and to reach our sample size. And then I analyze the data. So depending on the objective, I first look through all of the data holistically by the total sample to really understand what the main story is. And then I'll go into the data cuts, pull apart, significant differences, patterns, trends that are emerging from the data. And, it varies from project to project in terms of my analysis process, because it really can change based on the objectives and the type of data you're analyzing. And so I try and create this story that really brings the customer voice to life and the need and the problem. And once I identify that story, really bring that problem to life on slides, then I start to craft recommendations for how they could, move this forward. So, if I uncovered a big pain point in a feature, understanding what they could do and what's feasible in their organization to meet this need. And from there, I present all of the findings to clients as well, and really try and convince, those stakeholders what they need to do. And so I would say my favorite part of this whole process is within the analysis and reporting stage. So really identifying the need, crafting that story, and just bring that voice to life. It's kind of like treasure hunting in a way, because you do have your hypotheses and you do, predict what the customer is going to say. But a lot of the times you have this, diamond that you're like, oh, wow, that makes so much sense. Like this kind of brings it all together and makes you really see why the customer feels this way. So I think, uncovering that problem and really trying to explain the why behind the data is my favorite part.
So, wow. You literally step by step describe exactly what I do. So what a lot of people don't know about me, because they see me as like content creator, we have an agency, a consulting company, 65 people. And we provide CX for major brands around the world. I'm going tomorrow to open an office in Dubai, as an example. But I don't talk about that because we're all under NDA. And so and major brands who know seek me out for this exact thing you just described. And I've never heard anyone else describe what I do is sequentially accurate and honestly, with the treasure hunter and the diamond thing, that's exactly what it is. It's such a wonderful feeling when you're like looking, and like you're sifting through all this stuff, and then suddenly it starts to emerge like, oh, there's this thing that can be acted upon. Because so much of it, it's like a dust in the wind, it's like and I always start each of my projects. So because I just want to say, I validate everything you said from my perspective in terms of the strategy of experience, planning, design, execution. It's all sort of summed up in your expression. And the thing that grounds me at the very front of that process is I tell myself this saying. When I sit down to look at all the data, I remind myself that if I interrogate the data long enough, it'll say anything I want it to say. So I have to step back, because sometimes, we want to know this thing is right or wrong. But what you should be doing is treasure hunting. It doesn't matter what it...
Right. Yeah. And a lot of the times when I'm doing this analysis, I have the objectives just as a sticky note on my computer to remind me, you can go in the weeds to go into that treasure hunting, but, don't go too much into it, because you really need to, match all of your findings and insights to the main objective and really, make the client understand the problem related to their goals.
I'm just laughing because I don't have this conversation with very many people. I'm not surprised that you're from a new generation. And like I said, I think you were made for this era of business. Whereas, I'm at basically retirement age, and I've sort of made a personal commitment to myself to I have 2 more years of this and then I'm out because I'm too old. 5 years ago, I was a VP at a global agency and I got too old. hit a certain age and I got aged out. Whatever people say about not ageism isn't a thing, you get old enough in a corporation, unless you're the CEO or something. If you're just have climbed up the ladder, at a certain ladder, there's an age limit and expiration date and you're out. So I'm too old to be in this industry, especially if you're just sitting here oh yeah, I do that. I feel like my kids, they can do things on phones. I used to think I was technically smart. They're no, you gotta, even here, I was having trouble formatting this card.
Yeah. Well, I'm having the same experience too with Gen Z now.
Yeah. Okay. So you get it. But I think it's fascinating to hear you talk about this. And the reason I'm sort of hyping this up is you can go down into the weeds and you can get lost. Yeah. It's an endless sift of analysis. And since we're nerding out, sometimes do you do this? Maybe everybody does this, but this is the first conversation I'm really having about it. Sometimes you'll be going down, you'll sift down and you'll see something sparkle and you'll say, I don't know if that's sparkling enough. So you keep going down and you keep thinking about that thing back there, and you keep going like, I need to go back. And then you have to go all the way back up and then go back down.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
it's really, yeah. Sometimes I'm like, how do I even do this? Because I look at my notes sometimes as I'm writing my reports, and I'm like, wow, this wouldn't make sense to anybody else. So
okay, let's unpack that. That's very interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So for my big corporate clients, just share. I get the advantage of this because I own and operate.
Mm-hmm.
Let me correct that. I participate. I have a partner, Carla, who operates the business. She's the brains, and she makes it. I'm sort of like the circus sideshow, if you will. But what's fascinating about it is because I'm so close to the clients, what's happened is I used to present my findings, my insights. And like, I don't know about you, but I'll present maybe a 20 to 40 page deck to get us through this whole, because they have to understand why you picked the spot to mine and why you dug down so far. Mm-hmm. So let's say a 40 to 60 page deck, okay? But I'll have literally maybe 100, 200, 300 pages of notes where I've gone down all these different places. Mm-hmm. And just to get back to this like small slide deck. What I found very interesting is the clients now are like, hey, can we see your wild ass notes? Can we we understand they're unstructured, that it's a bunch of like snippets you've pulled and theories you've run that exhausted and didn't work. But can we just have all your crazy notes? So on my last assignment, they were like, just give us your doc with all your wild ass notes. Mm. And it was fascinating because now that I'm putting together, they also had a younger team of folks like yourself. Who like I can imagine you would say, I'd be curious to see what his wild ass notes look like. So it's interesting. So you're definitely like destined to be a world-class experience leader over the course of your career. I would recommend, and I hope you don't mind me just offering some advice. Like, I gotta pass all this content and wisdom to somebody. Hopefully other people are listening too. The book by Gene Bliss as a model of how to think as a senior executive. That's really what it is. It's a blueprint of thinking about the industry and how you contextualize yourself. And when you were talking about this niching down, it really is. It's like if you don't have a clear value and if you don't have a clear objective, the data will toss you around like a small sailboat in a hurricane.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's why, sometimes it's so important to, set the survey up in the appropriate way, target the right audience, because if you are just, if your survey is filled with like a general population of consumers versus those who represent a certain population, like the data just doesn't mean anything. So you really just need to make sure that, the people who you're speaking to represent the audience that you want.
How do we know what audience we want?
Mm-hmm.
That might be too long of a question for a podcast. But yeah. You get what I'm saying. It's an interesting, it's a really deep question in that, number one, I mean, I should let you talk. I'm talking too much, but the audiences are like flocks of birds. They're like, they migrate, they do all these different things, and they're not as easy to capture as like in a broadcast era. Like, so I'm part of the new school of global economic integrated thinking for marketing and supply and demand. Whereas the generations before me, they had the television. They were like, here's how many TVs, everybody's going to be sitting there. So they broadcast and they think that they can target.
Right.
And that's like not how it works.
No, that's interesting. Yeah.
What's your take on all that? What do you want to talk about? I'm talking too much.
No. Well, this is all so interesting. But yeah, we can go into AI too if we want.
Okay. Hot takes.
So AI, within market research, it's, I think revolutionizing the industry very quickly. But like a lot of people say, I still don't think, my job at least is going to be obsolete. I think we're going to need that human factor still to check what AI is giving us. So right now I use AI in my day-to-day a lot.
Same.
I use it to help me write, surveys, to kind of gut check if I'm recommending the right methodology, helping with my analysis, headlines even. And so it's really helped me do my research a lot faster. And I think it's really elevating my research to the next level because it's helping me do it quicker and it's giving me more bandwidth to really focus on more of the strategic things, and really have more time to take a step back and really look at the whole report holistically, match it to the objectives and really understand, is this, good enough? Does this story make sense? And so I think that has helped me, elevate my reports, my presentations, and it's building my confidence as well in terms of, being confident in the things I recommend because, having ChatGPT gut check what I think is right. If they're saying, yes, this is the right approach, and if I keep seeing that, then, I might not have to use it anymore. So it's helping me do things a lot more quickly and building my confidence in my recommendations.
Once again, you have described my process entirely. And it is about the gut check. But AI, since you're really being authentic, and I really appreciate that. I'm to the point now where I think I would feel confident doing anything without the gut check from AI. Even like when we go to restaurants or my son and I are talking, I'm like, hold on, let's ask GPT what it thinks. Here's an example. I was Googling things to do with my son since we're here and in New York, and I'm like, I have a limited number of days. I want to do something fun with him. I asked Google, what's something great to do with my son on a cold New York night? It has just laundry lists of all this stuff, right? Unprioritized, unfiltered, sort of ad purchased propaganda for business. I asked GPT, and GPT was like, and I happen to know, but I contextualize it. My son's 22. It's this cold. What should we do? And it's like serendipity. Hot chocolate is right around the corner from your son. And I'm like, yes. Perfect. That there's a real case study of research that hit two consumers exactly right using AI. But what and I know is I could have just as much used that AI and asked all the wrong questions, not contextualized it, and it constantly hallucinates. And why wouldn't it? It's like it doesn't have any idea what we're trying to do. It's like your best friend who's trying to help you, but if GPT could say one thing to humans, what it would say is, I can't read your mind. Right. Exactly. Talk to me.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the ideal state of ChatGPT for a lot of people would be, upload this raw data file and then spit out a report or spit out the story. But it's just, I don't know if it'll ever get to that because just from, working with ChatGPT now, it needs that human lens. It needs that human brain to really understand all the connections and the story, because it can definitely pull apart insights and identify patterns, but really understanding the big picture, I think, is where you need to come in.
Yes. And I don't want to drag you spent already more than enough time with us, but because you're being so authentic, we do need humans for the big picture. It does do pattern recognition, but the delivery of the message to the client, we validate the relationship between the audience and the brand. GPT has no perspective or context for any of that, and it never will. And I will just say, I just want to say I validate and see what you're doing, and you're in all the right areas, and I want to learn more about your whole company and what's going on there in the future. But the other thing I would say is you repeated a narrative of humans in the loop, or we need humans plus AI. AI can't do it without us. And I would just offer you as like a researcher and a speaker on the topic, these things that I've been chasing, which is just study the lump of labor fallacy. Are you familiar with it? I won't get into it too much, but you as a researcher, it'll show you research why the psychology of this AI human in the loop thing keeps appearing in everyone's conversation, and how irrelevant it really is. And the other thing I would say is
how irrelevant.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I leave that treasure hunt for you. And the other thing is Japan has over 25% of the global robotics industry. And why is that? And it's because they those leaders understood that robots, see what other markets do is they try to replace humans with automation. And what Japan did was augment humans with automation. And it's part of this. These are these little niches that you're talking about. Like where does that hair split? So right. I just leave you to study about automation, robotics from Japan and how they address the market. That'll give you one perspective. Lump of labor fallacy. And the last thing I would say is fascinating other indicator about AI. Just do a little research on which countries have the most patents on AI, because that'll tell you. And these are things we could explore on a podcast, but just with those three things, I think will emerge with some diamonds.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Is there anything you'd like to ask me? I'm assuming you may have a question. I always feel like I talk too much, but do you have any questions, any last words that you'd like to say on the podcast today?
Well, thank you again so much for having me. This has been a pleasure. I, always love talking about CX and research. I guess I have a question for you just around, all of the interviews you've been doing over the past couple of years. In terms of CX, other than AI, what have you seen, as the biggest difference in terms of, what these people or CX professionals or CX leaders are concerned about, what they're talking about? Yeah. What is the other evolution that you see other than AI?
Yeah. So here it is. You can ask ChatGPT what customer experience is. In every way you can think of, and it will not tell you the right answer. It doesn't know. And you can Google customer experience, and Google doesn't know either. And what I can tell you is from the vast number of meetings and experiences and countries, there is more regenerative content about customer experience and more curation of customer experience as a topic and a strategic POV than there is anything else. There's only a few people who understand where it came from and what it really does. And I'll summarize it for you so you can take this onto the next horizon, which is, and to be clear, this is my current POV. I'm open to the fact that I could be wrong about this, but my current belief is customer experience in its soul, in its original, most pure state, is the new global operating system for economics. And here's why. Every single language, place, culture, whatever has customers now. Okay. And they all have experiences. But more accurately put, anywhere that glimmer of true customer experience touches something on a product team, on a marketing team, in a customer care team, in a government, in a university, it changes that from a hierarchy to a matrix. And it's this matrix that allows the teams, it creates a new kind of teamwork, distributed authority. It shifts from playing man-to-man to zone. It gives this company that was trapped in a geography or trapped in a niche or trapped in an audience, it gives it the matrix capability to tap into global markets, global economies, different ways of thought, different customers. It allows you to restructure your customer acquisition across things like interests rather than location. So CX at its central point is it's a new operating system for the world. And that GPT still doesn't know that.
Right. That is so interesting.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you, Dennis. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you for being part of this journey with us. We hope these conversations challenge your thinking and inspire you to explore new paths. There's so much more to discover. Keep listening, dive into more episodes, and let's continue this adventure together.